I'm Audie, and I recently became the world record holder on Speedrun.com for Google Solitaire. It all started in early to mid-April of 2024. I don't really have a cool origin story or anything, like I grew up an orphan on the streets with nothing to my name but a deck of cards, but I knew that one day I would become a solitaire champion. Yeah, no, nothing like that. The truth is, I was just bored in class one day, so I decided to mess around on my laptop. I'd previously dabbled in some of the other Google game remakes like Snake and Minesweeper, so I decided to give Solitaire a try. Solitaire has always had a special place in my heart. I love card games, and I'm something of a loner by nature, so a card game that I could play by myself was kind of a dream come true. And on that fateful spring day, it turned out to be exactly the kind of stimulation that I was looking for. It took me a few tries, but then I got my first win, clocking in at around 10 minutes. Pleased with my victory, playing Solitaire in class became a new ritual. Then I started playing outside of class, and naturally, the more I played, the faster I got. And thus begins my humble, serendipitous journey towards the world record. In those early days, I had no intentions of speedrunning. It's kind of bittersweet to look back on now, knowing that in the weeks that followed, my relationship with the game of Solitaire would change forever. Part 1. The beginning. In a very short span of time, Solitaire became too easy. And mind you, I was already playing on hard mode because I'm not a chump. And don't get me wrong, there's certainly an element of luck to the game, so it's not like I was batting 1,000 every single time. But in a matter of days, I was able to cut my personal best down from 10 minutes to 5 minutes. Then to 4 minutes, then 3 minutes, then 2. It was around this point that my progression began to level out. On April 23rd, 2024, I achieved a 1 minute and 44 second win, and for the first time, I asked myself, how far am I going to take this? Is there a specific PB that I'm aiming to achieve, or am I just trying to see how fast I can go? I decided to play it by ear. I set myself the goal of achieving a sub 90 second run, and in a few days, I got it. 1 minute and 21 seconds. So I was still improving, but much, much more slowly than before. The faster I got, the harder it became to outdo myself. Like, exponentially harder. I figured I must be nearing some sort of peak, so I finally checked Speedrun.com to see what the record was. There are a few different categories for Google Solitaire on Speedrun.com. It can be broken down by difficulty, but also by input method, meaning touchscreen or mouse. I was still doing a bit of both at that point, so I looked at both. In the mouse category, there was a 3-way tie for first place at 27 seconds. The touchscreen record was 29 seconds, a tie between two users called The Coolest Laser and &_X. 29 seconds may not seem like that big of a leap from my PB of 81 seconds, but in this context, it totally was. But now I had a sense of how I compared to the leaderboards, and it inspired me to keep pushing. Truth be told, I still didn't have any intentions of going for the world record. I was just going to keep playing for as long as it was fun, and I was having a lot of fun. That said, I did start to record all of my runs, just in case anything monumental occurred. This also meant that I was playing exclusively on my phone because it was easier to screen record on there, so I was committed to the touchscreen subcategory. On April 29th, 2024, I submitted to Speedrun.com for the first time with a run of 1 minute and 18 seconds. Not because it was particularly exceptional or anything, but because at the time it landed me at 69th place on the leaderboard. Nice. Another 3 days went by before I next outdid myself, but on May 1st, I achieved a 58-second run. My first sub 1 minute. It was glorious. I still remember this one vividly. I was working a shift in the dining hall at my college, and I decided to take a little break, so I stepped out onto the balcony, and it was just me and my apron with a cup of soda and a game of solitaire on my phone, and then, boom. Sub 1, just out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it. I had only sort of subconsciously been working towards it, and then it just happened, and it kind of sucked to go back to work after that when all I wanted to do was scream from the rooftops about my success. If only I knew then what was to come. Part 2. Descent into Madness. You might be thinking, wow, Audie, a sub 1 minute run in May of 2024, and yet you only now got the record in March of 2025? What gives? And that's a fair question, but remember, there's a lot of luck involved in Solitaire, or at least more than you might expect, especially playing on hard mode, which doesn't affect the RNG as far as I'm aware, but it can make it harder to get a card you need from the deck. Undos are allowed in all subcategories on Speedrun.com for Google Solitaire, but when you're speedrunning, you don't always have time for that, so you can just kind of get stuck. So you reset, and reset, and reset, and reset, and reset, and reset. Welcome, friends, to the dark ages of my speedrunning endeavors. I can't take myself seriously saying dark ages when I'm wearing this fucking fuck-ass hat. Remember when it took me 3 days to beat my PB? Yeah, well, those days turned into weeks, and then eventually entire months were going by before I would get a new personal best. This is the part of speedrunning that I have never been able to fathom, especially for games like Minecraft, where there are so many different conditions that need to be met. Like, you can make it to the end in 6 minutes, but if that dragon won't perch, you're donezo, buddy. I have so much respect for anyone who speedruns anything in earnest. It is such a tedious and taxing and mind-numbing experience. But I continued regardless. Despite the frustrations, I was still having fun, and that was always the priority. Plus, in around mid-May, a new runner called 1NH3 took the world record with a time of 26 seconds. Having a new competitor in the mix was super motivating. It made me realize that this wasn't a solo journey. Despite the nature of the game, Solitaire was actually a pretty communal experience, and that made me want to be a part of it even more. The months went on and on and on. There isn't really an interesting way to tell this part of the story. I kicked off the summer with a run of 46 seconds, which I then didn't beat again until August, and even then it was only by a few seconds. It was around this point that, admittedly, I started to lose my drive a bit. I would sometimes go days without playing, if not more, but every time I started to lose hope or think about giving up, something would pull me back in. For example, I stumbled across a book at my local library called 100 Best Solitaire Games, which contained tips and tricks for Solitaire and a bunch of its variations. Not all of these tips were conducive to speedrunning, but it was still super interesting to look through. It reminded me of my love for the game. I also worked up the nerve to try Spider Solitaire, which is like standard Solitaire, but harder. In standard Solitaire, also called Klondike, I got into quite a grind of ordering cards, resetting, and ordering cards again. But Spider required me to actually use my brain. I had to think about the game again. Even though not every Spider strategy is transferable to Klondike, it got me thinking about the game in new ways, which is kind of exactly what I needed. And then, on September 8th, 2024, I achieved a new personal best. 32 seconds, putting me at 5th place on the leaderboard. 5th place is solid, respectable, an achievement in and of itself. But at this point, I was committed. I dedicated about 6 months of my life to Google Solitaire, and I was not going to stop when I was this close to 1st place. I wanted the world record. Part 3. The journey. The cycle continued. Playing, resetting, playing, resetting. What was once an in-class ritual was now a bedtime routine, a morning routine, a sitting on the toilet routine. Any dull moment in my life was occupied by playing Google Solitaire, resetting over and over again. It wasn't even tedious anymore, it was just second nature. One thing that helped keep my attention was the addition of a new category on Speedrun.com, Google Solitaire Both Difficulties. Basically, you had to win a game on hard mode and a game on easy mode, and then submit the total time. I hadn't played on easy mode at all, so paradoxically it was kind of harder for me, but I did submit a run of 1 minute and 46 seconds, which put me at 3rd place on the leaderboard, and at the time of recording this video is where I still am today. As for my typical speedrunning, morale was running low. I was starting to lose hope that I would ever get 1st place, but just like every other time that I'd begun to lose hope, I proved myself wrong. November 30th, 2024, 27 seconds, and tied with a user called Flamboyance for 2nd place. This achievement was both thrilling and infuriating. I cannot tell you how many times I rewatched that video back and screamed at my past self to move the 3 of spades. Please, for the love of God, move the 3 of spades. And indeed, if I had moved the 3 of spades sooner, perhaps the record could have been mine on that very day. Watching that video back, knowing that I could have been faster, it pissed me off. But it also kept me going. It meant that 1st place was possible, and I was going to get there. 4 months passed before it finally happened. In that time, I developed an affinity for the game Balatro, which I think was maybe designed in a lab for me specifically, I don't know. When I wasn't playing Balatro, I was playing Solitaire, and vice versa. Playing, resetting, playing, resetting, playing, resetting, losing brain cells, please help me. I'd like to take this moment to shout out my mom. She's been super supportive of my Solitaire journey since day 1, which she didn't need to be because there are much better things I could have been doing with my time. But she kept asking for updates on my progress, and in those last few weeks when she could tell that my morale was running low, she said, "Come on, are you really gonna stop at 2nd place?" She was right. I couldn't stop at 2nd place, not after everything that I had worked for. So, in about mid-March, I decided to get back into the groove. I was playing more frequently and with more precision. I was focused, I was determined, and I was ready. And then, on March 25th, 2025, at 7:03 p.m., it happened. 25 seconds, 1st place, world record. Roll the clip! Part 5. So, what now? In case you were wondering, I achieved the Google Solitaire world record while I was sitting on the toilet. You didn't need to know that, but I think it's funnier if you do. That's the thing though, isn't it? Becoming a solitaire speedrunner wasn't something I'd ever planned for myself, it just kinda happened. And then, through 11 months of trial and error and playing and resetting, losing hope and picking myself back up again, I climbed the ranks and I made it happen. All just because I was bored in class one day. It never fails to amaze me how the tiniest choices we make in our lives can influence what we go on to do and who we go on to become. So, what did I learn? Well, I really like Solitaire. Even after everything, I still think it's a really good game and I have a lot of fun playing it. But I think my biggest takeaway is this. Something that seems impossible is not necessarily so. 1 year ago, if I'd seen the competition that I was up against for first place, I never would have thought that I could someday be among them. If there's something you want to do, sometimes it's just a matter of taking the time to make it happen. Not always, but sometimes. But I didn't do it alone, so some more thank yous are in order. First to my friend Connie, who also happens to be my roommate, and so was the first person to hear about it when I got the world record. When I first began my Solitaire journey and I expressed concern that I was starting to have dreams about Google Solitaire, Connie encouraged me to keep playing, at least for as long as it was fun. And that's the mindset that carried me through to the end, so thank you. Thank you as well to my other friends, namely Alex, Portia, Magpie, and Casey, who celebrated all of my victories with me and tolerated me when I played Google Solitaire at mealtimes. Sorry, and thank you. Huge thank you and shout out to the wonderful people who moderate the Google Solitaire category on speedrun.com. I don't know how many of you there are, but specifically Ben_Excel, who verified my winning run as well as many of my runs before that. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. And to my fellow Solitaire speedrunners, 1NH3, Flamboyance, Gambit, The Coolest Laser, and &_X, thank you guys for setting the bar so high. It is an honor to be among you. You're so cool. As for what comes next, I don't know. Maybe I'll give the both difficulties category another shot, or maybe I'll try speedrunning something else entirely. All I know for certain is that if at any point someone bests me and takes the record, I'm gonna try and take it back. Maybe I'm inviting a whole new slew of competition by putting this video out into the world, and to be honest, I kinda hope so. I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing. I learned a lot about myself and what I'm capable of over these past 11 months by playing Google Solitaire, which is a crazy thing to say, but it is true. And if anyone were to have a similar experience because of me, I would honestly be thrilled. So if you do take the record from me, congratulations! It's no small feat, trust me, I know. I will take it back from you someday, but in the meantime, I hope you enjoy being on top. I know I'm still riding the high. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe. I'm hoping to do more long-form content more frequently, maybe a tier list of my favorite Solitaire game variants. Could be fun. If there's anything specific you want to see from me, or if you have any questions about my speedrunning experience, feel free to comment all of that down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!